Just want to remind you folks that each of these individuals were hand selected by our team because of their work in making peace building actionable, right? So it's more than just something you study, more than just the way that you feel, they're taking action. So today we have three really special guests who, like our audience, come from very diverse walks of life, yet somehow fit so well together. So first up, I'd like to introduce Tia Hartsock. Tia is a trainer, independent consultant, researcher, and evaluator for nonprofits, state departments, and federal agencies. Additionally, she's the project director of a federal substance abuse mental health services administration initiative at the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Division in Hawaii's Department of Health. Tia is an adjunct lecturer at the University of Hawaii's School of Social Work. She received her master's in criminal justice administration from Chaminade and her master's in social work at UH. She's a SAMHSA certified trainer on trauma-informed care, and in July 2021 was selected as the chair of the statewide trauma-informed care task force to implement Act 209. Tia, are you there?
Yeah, aloha, aloha,
Awesome.
aloha, mai kako, everybody. Good morning. Mahalo for having me. I just, first of all, just wanted to say thank you to Seeds of Peace, Scott, Maya, and Carrie for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Have a quick little short presentation. Mostly what this is gonna, I was asked to do this. Thank you for that, that introduction too, Scott. Hard to follow that adorable little kid president. That was very cute. I'm here to briefly talk about the concepts around trauma-informed care, but as it relates to creating commitment and the critical thinking theme that you folks are looking at. And so I was thinking about this for a while and I was trying to figure out, okay, how can we tie this in? I just wanted to get a quick, just by looking at the folks on the screen, how many of you have heard of trauma-informed care in your practice? Couple, and so several that have not. Okay, and then just to give you a very brief, I know that there's probably a big range, but just to give you a brief idea of what this is and how it relates to being committed. To me, it's about connection, right? How do we connect? Right now, we're having a very hard time connecting, I feel, to others as we strive to make it through the days, the weeks, the months, these last couple of years, with some moments of joy, of course, coupled with moments of heartache and struggle. But I think that's his life, right? So if we look at how we can create connections with anybody in our practice as we encounter on a day-to-day basis, trauma-informed care is just really understanding, it's a framework, it's a philosophical framework. It's really just understanding that trauma plays a part in our lives. There's a space for it in what we do on a day-to-day basis, and it informs the way in which we behave in good ways and bad ways. Lots of literature coming out in the last 10 years about trauma-informed care. But as it relates to a commitment and a critical thinking on how we interact with ourselves, how we interact with this place, and how we interact with our families and our communities, it becomes a really, in my eyes, a really critical part of moving through our day. Especially in the moments as we've had in the last couple of years. I just created a couple of slides. Am I able to share screen?
Yes, you should be able to.
Okay. So as you all know, we have endured community crisis before. As communities, wherever we've grown up, wherever we've experienced school, living, etc. But with large scale traumas like we're experiencing right now, we oftentimes see, as you all know, we oftentimes see certain behavioral and mental health needs rise to the top. Depression, post-traumatic stress disorder triggers, looking at substance use has gone up. And of course, anxiety and depression of not knowing what's coming next, not having any locus of control over our lives right now. And unfortunately, things like domestic violence and child abuse increase during large-scale traumas. But what we know about large-scale traumas is that what we have control over becomes very small and makes a lot of people very, very anxious, nervous, and stressed out. This constant exposure to prolonged stress is what our brains are experiencing right now. Very helpful to understand on an individual level, and very helpful to understand as practitioners, as people who are in the helping profession, which are all of you folks. One of the things that I really like to add into any presentation that I do and start off, because trauma-informed care, that is a 6-hour training. We don't have 6 hours, we have 10 minutes. So I'm just gonna give you the really quick concept of what trauma-informed care is. It's really understanding how trauma informs our behaviors, ourselves, our families, the students that we work with, the clients that we provide service to. So that all starts with how we show up. How do we show up on a daily basis? How do we show up to our breakfast table? How do we show up to the office? How do we show up to our Zoom meetings? And how do we show up for our neighbors in our community and our families? And this, how many of you have seen this before, this image? This is the Lokahi wheel. This was developed by Kamehameha School several years ago to kind of give us an idea on what, this is how I interpret it, looks like to practice, right? To life, to working through our day. How much do we balance these 6 domains in our life? How much of our time is spent in our minds? How much of our time is spent regulating our emotions? How much of our time is spent focusing on our physical body, on our spiritual self? And what this, as I interpret this for my own practice, what this signifies is if I take stock at any given time and do a self-assessment, and I draw a Lokahi wheel on my paper, what would that look like? If this is a balanced 6 domain slices, like pie slices, what would mine look like? Would it look like balanced like this? Or would it look like, oh my gosh, I'm in my mind way too much and it's like 2/3 of the pie? I haven't gone hiking for 3 weeks now, so that's maybe a tiny little 1/8 of the pie. But I always think once we self-reflect, initially when we self-reflect, it helps for us to understand where we benefit ourselves and where we're in deficit of our needs. So that tells me what I need to address. So if I think about it myself and I'm thinking, okay, what do I need today? How do I feel and how am I working through? What is my level of stress? How am I showing up? And I think, oh gosh, today's gonna be a hard day, or this weekend's packed with stuff. I like to take stock. Have I done this in the last 30 days? Have I paid any attention to this? Have I paid too much attention to this? And then try and figure out how to balance that out. So initially with trauma-informed care, I really like to look at how do we balance. First, we take stock in what our lives and we can scale it in the last 24 hours, in the last 30 days, in the last 6 months. What would our Lokahi wheel look like? So you can Google this image. You can use it for students as a self-assessment. I like to even look at this for my daughter and have her try and think about what she wants to focus on for the next weekend. But even more so with something like this, it's kind of blurry, but this is an emotion wheel. How many of you guys use emotion wheels in your practice? Love these. I even have one right on my couch. It's a pillow. It's actually like a meditation pillow is what it is, but it's an emotion wheel. And I play a game with my child and kind of like Wheel of Fortune type of a game and click, 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 stop on this one. And what does that emotion look like? So when I'm thinking about an emotion wheel and how it creates a commitment to self, because before we can commit to anybody else, before we can commit to our partners, before we can commit to our youth and families, before we can connect and commit to our workplace, we have to figure out how to connect to ourselves. And connecting to ourselves is really part of understanding what our emotions are informing us around our needs, how they show up in the day, how many emotions we experience in the last 24 hours. If you look at this wheel, how many of those emotions have you experienced in the last 24 hours? Just take a moment and think about, have you felt insecure? Have you felt a little anxious? Have you felt a little proud even? Have you felt trusted, lonely even, maybe even hurt? How many of these emotions have we felt, and what do we do with these emotions? How do they inform our behavior? Once we can really start to think about how that works for us and how we regulate when we get in the red and we get in the blue, how do we, and how long does it take us to move to the kind of pink and the yellows and the greens? How long does it take you after you feel hurt and angry and rageful and hateful to start to feel joyful and playful and creative again? When was the last time you felt really angry? How long did it take you to get to the point of feeling joyful again? And when I think about that, I think, so if it takes me several hours, maybe even several days, maybe years, depending on what's happened, how and what expectations do we have when we work with youth and families to regulate those negative, intense emotions to get back to being engaged and ready to learn after they've felt angry and hateful and hurt and hostile? How do we get them and expect them to say, you've got 10 minutes, you better come back with a better face on, and you better come back ready to learn? That's to me what helps me create that empathy and critically think about out of our heads and into our hearts, and really feel what those emotions are, not run away from them, and really feel them in all that they are, because that's what makes us human, right? And then be able to move through the emotions. It takes us a while, and we're all adults, right? How long do we expect kids to go through this process? And that's, to me, what trauma informed is about. It's really looking about how we create space and an understanding of and how those emotions inform the way we show up. I'm not going to go, I know I've already taken probably close to my time, but if you think about what trauma informed care is, it's really the understanding of trauma, the fact that it shows up in our lives, recognizing the signs and symptoms of it in people, understanding what helps us to respond more effectively to people who are triggered and traumatized. And then, of course, the whole effort is behind resisting triggering people, resisting traumatizing people, trying not to let that happen by escalating. Because if we have control over our emotions, we can regulate ourselves. We understand what we need at any given moment when we're in the red and the blue, and we communicate that and role model that to others to help them move to those kind of lighter shades of being. Sorry, that was a lot of information. I know I had such a short period of time. There's some amazing other speakers that I want to make sure I give the appropriate time to. So just a very quick snapshot of the framework and philosophical approach to trauma-informed care. It really just means that our experiences as children and adults and our traumatic responses to what happens to us, how it lives in our body, how it comes out through our emotions, and how it informs our behavior. That's all it is. That's all it is. So mahalo for having me. And yes, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat box, I suppose. But thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and hope you folks have a fantastic day. I'm going to turn it back over to Scott.
Yeah, mahalo Tia. We're seeing a question in the chat. May we see the 4R slide again? And yeah, to everyone else, if you folks have any questions, we've reserved a couple minutes for some Q&A with Tia. While Tia pulls that up, I just want to really mahalo Tia, because so Tia actually she runs a lot of these sorts of trainings, but they're usually much longer. In our elementary school, she's actually running a 9-part training series with all of the teachers and parents in the community. So when we asked her, oh, can you do a 15-minute presentation? I knew that it was kind of asking a lot to kind of contract everything that she teaches into 15 minutes. So this is really just scratching the surface, and we and Tia hopefully can be available for a deeper dive later.
Dennis, I think you have a question.
Yes, thank you so very much for that presentation. Very, very interesting. 2 follow-up questions. The first one is, what type of training would you suggest that or recommend that is in depth and that really has a very holistic and professional certification, entailed in it? And I'm wondering if you could speak about complex trauma as opposed to simple trauma within, communities where either because of the colonialism and historical traumas, that those are kind of like imprinted in those communities when we're doing work. Thank you.
Oh yeah. Thank you for those questions. Twofold. So the first piece is, what kind of training would I recommend? So it's very interesting. Trauma-informed care is only about 15, 20 years old in concept and on paper. And what we're looking, but the origins of it are endless. Cultures have been talking about how we respond to and create a balanced approach to life for centuries, right? So this is not new. This is just reframed for our purposes. So, but because it's relatively new in that type of in the Western practice, there is no national framework. There's organizations, there's no national body that oversees and certifies. SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, I have a certification from them to as a trauma-informed trainer, but there is no real national body that certifies and oversees. We just entered in July, the state of Hawaii just entered legislation that is creating what that framework might look like for Hawaii, possibly even certification programs. So we just started a task force. It's going to go on for 3 years. And the end goal is to have a framework for the state, relevant for the state and diverse communities in the state, on what that certification might look like, how practitioners using cultural and Hawaiian practices and other indigenous practices might resonate with our communities here, and how that can be kind of built and gathered in a repository for folks to access on a regular basis. But that is beginning processes. There's, like I said, there's nonprofits across the country that on the continent that have developed certification programs. There's universities that have created graduate certificates in trauma and trauma-informed care. We're just right now working to develop a trauma-informed course for Outreach College at University of Hawaii. So we're just about to present a syllabus to the committee through the School of Social Work. And hopefully that will lead to a certification, a certificate in the university through the Outreach College within the next couple of years. But that's something that we're working on right now. The second part to your question was about complex versus kind of acute trauma. What acute trauma in the medical profession, right, means like something that just happened or that's happening right now. So acute trauma is looking at something that happened once. If we got beat up at school once and we didn't recover from that emotionally, and so now we're were hesitant to build relationships with others, or were really hesitant to be around big kids, or whatever that might look like. Or if we were in a one car accident, motor vehicle accident, and we still are trying to recover from that one acute situation, versus complex trauma. And neither of them are more intense than the other, because it's how people perceive the incident. Complex trauma is when you get in a car accident, and you're walking home and you get beat up by the bully at school, and you go home to an alcoholic mother and a depressed father, and you have to take care of all of your siblings. This is trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma that becomes very difficult to pull apart and work on. And a lot of the interventions, a lot of the Western interventions, mental health interventions, speak to dealing and working through one trauma at a time. But as we all know, our brains don't work like that very well. You can't pull that apart easily, and it's not pretty. So how do we work on and address complex trauma? To me, it really starts with connection, because a lot of times when you talk to trauma survivors, they're just hungry to connect. Homeless people, they're so disconnected from society. People don't even look at them, right? They're not even here. We can't even address it because it's so much pain and struggle that it's hard for us to address, because that means we have to address our own pain and struggle. So I always start with the very beginning of, how do we show up? How do we work through our own emotions? How do we digest our own trauma? And how do we inform the way in which we connect with other people, and do so with empathy and compassion? So that, to me, complex trauma versus acute trauma, one is a one-time happening now or happened in the past. The other one is just trauma against trauma against trauma. Both can be very detrimental. Both can, but both can really spur post-traumatic growth. And survivors of complex trauma can create and live amazingly fulfilled, joyous lives. That's the amazing, the amazement of the human spirit, in my opinion. So I hope that answered your question. I will stop talking because I can go on. I can keep going.
Oh, thank you so much, Tia. And Tia, if anyone wants to contact you, would you like them to go through us, or would you like to offer your information? Either way is fine with us.
I can drop my email
Cool.
in the chat box. Yeah, please feel free
Awesome.
to reach out anytime.
Thank you so much, Tia. Good to see you. Our next meeting, we agreed you're going to be walking on the treadmill as we meet, right?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much,
exactly.
Tia. Great
Right
to
there.
see you. Great
Nice to see
you.
everybody. Aloha.
Aloha. All right. So thank you to Tia. Up next, we have Sachin Chaudhry. Sachin is the founder and CEO of Trust Circle and serves as the president and director for the nonprofit organizations Bring Change Foundation, Inc. and Give Foundation, Inc. Sachin is an international speaker and has been recognized as a global thought leader in the field of frontier tech, mental health, and well-being. Sachin has been featured on BBC World News on the World Mental Health Day, the World Economic Forum, Forbes, Economic Times, and more. Trust Circle, which is what he'll be talking about today, is a globally acclaimed, research-backed, AI-driven social emotional learning technology platform that is trusted by UNICEF, the WHO Collaborating Center for Mental Health Research, the Warwick University, schools and community organizations in California and Hawaii, and has been recognized globally for empowering individuals, organizations, counties, and cities with a data-driven predictive model that is inspiring proactive action. Sachin, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Mahalo. Scott, you can hear me well and you can see me, right? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
First of all, it's an honor and pleasure to be sharing this space with everyone here. I'm going to share this quick question on the chat with everyone. Imagine a world where social emotional learning is core to our education system. Audacious mission, right? to achieve this mission, if I say all you need is 2 to 3 minutes of self-reflection time every day, would you feel inspired to allocate this meaningful self-reflection time for yourself and for your community members? And can we together inspire this systemic change? Let's dive in to see how we can together, and it's truly possible in our lifetime. So I'm going to share my screen and I'll actually take you back in time. I'm going to walk you through the platform as Scott talked about, which is Trust Circle, but there is a lot of pain, personal adversity, passion, purpose involved in this. So let me take you first to something that might resonate with many of you, but I've lived this personal adversity day in and day out for the last 27 years. So if I sum it up, who am I? I'm a caregiver of a soul who really is alive within me, but at the same time, it actually has inspired change. So the picture that you see here is of me and my younger brother. I'm in red. My younger brother was bullied in school at the age 12 and he had an emotional breakdown. As family members, we missed early signs of risk. Not only us, but teachers and his friends obviously missed those early signs of risk as well. He was further diagnosed with mental health issue. Now, we could have easily identified early signs of risk, right? But honestly, it's not that easy. And many slip into that black hole every minute, every day. So Trust Circle, primarily, if I sum it up, is what happened with my brother should never happen with anyone else. Can we have a system in place that can help identify early signs of risk? Can we foster prevention, participation, and prediction? The 3 Ps, which are missing in our sick care system, which we call healthcare, but it actually is sick care system. When you get sick, you find refuge in the medical system, but in mental health, brain never gives us early signs of pain or anything that you can notice, and one fine day you snap. Now let's also look at what are the forces that pushes individual over the edge. Is it the fault of the individual or the environment in which the individual is? And I'm sure that you'll say that it's the environment, because these are the only 3 environments that we all bubble back and forth into: personal life, academic, social life, and professional maybe, right? Now imagine if there is a system that actually not only identifies proactively who is on the edge, but at the same time gives you the power to look into that meaningful data where you can see the forces are coming from personal side or professional or academic. The key question is, can we empower individuals at scale? And can we identify at-risk individuals proactively and inspire targeted proactive interventions? As Scott talked about, and thank you, Tia, for bringing awareness for all of us on our emotions, because these are the foundation elements of our existence. And you'll see here in this few minutes from now why understanding emotions and self-reflecting on emotions, what Tia talked about, is so very profound, and it can simply save lives. So if we focus on prevention, early intervention, and social emotional learning, which is all what Trust Circle is about, you will see things change. And this is the vision that I'm talking about. And to achieve this vision, it is very, very clear and simple step, which is, can we allocate 2 to 3 minutes of self-reflection time? And in those, if we are in a school system, can teachers, before starting the class, ask students to reflect on their anger, sadness, fear, or joy, just 4 emotions. So Trust Circle is based on multi-tiered system of support, positive behavioral support system, CASTLE. You will see much more as I show you in action. But we are honored to join forces with UNICEF to deploy this platform to 1.2 million plus individuals over the next few years. But let me now walk you through what the platform actually is. So before I dive in, I'll just play 30, 40 seconds minute video. And this is the website, but I'll go down here, you can watch it. There are others as well. Help save alive in school in California, and I'm going to play it here.
Hello, my name is Sue Goldman. I've been the principal at Gale Ranch Middle School in San Ramon, California for the past 7 years. My philosophy around kids and education is strictly a whole child approach. I believe that in order for kids to be successful in school, you have to start with their hearts. If we can improve the social emotional health of our kids, the desire and curiosity to learn will naturally follow. I believe so strongly that social emotional learning is the cornerstone for lifelong success, that we at Gale Ranch have embedded it into everything we do. This year, we are fortunate to discover a company called Trust Circle. And quite frankly, during the past 25 years in education, it's the first product centered on social emotional learning that I would consider to be a game changer. Trust Circle is a fully customizable platform for any school and provides kids a trusted and confidential space to write, reflect, and learn about their emotions. I truly believe that Trust Circle is revolutionizing the way in which schools can propel well-being on campus, identify kids who might be at risk for emotional well-being issues, and galvanize early interventions. It is in this work that we are all truly the benefactors.
Okay. So I'm going to now quickly walk you through the product. Now, the product, as I talked about, is built on the foundational element of allocating 2 to 3 minutes of that meaningful self-reflection time. As Thea talked about, we experience all these emotions, but do we actually care to think through why are we experiencing those? So imagine a class where teacher steps in and asks students to take their personal devices or school issued devices through mobile app or laptop, desktop, whatever it is. The student is given that trusted space of 2 to 3 minutes of quiet time before the class begins or after the class ends. And the student is tracking their emotion. Now here, they can simply answer this question, how joyful are you feeling today? They won't be able to step forward and press next if they do not enter anything. So the system asks them to enter something. It could be great day today, right? So if they don't know it, it is okay. But the point is, we need to inspire that subconscious, meaningful habit into them so that they can understand that emotions are never in silos. There is an event in an environment which triggers an emotion that leads to a reaction. How angry are you feeling today? Could be old friend lied to me. And if they don't know, it's okay. They say, I don't know. The third one is, how sad are you feeling today? A little, my pet is unwell. And you will see how simple it is to inspire the systemic change if we just ask our community members to track and give time to themselves. It could be COVID, forces are getting stronger. Anything that they think, right, is making them feel that way. So that's it. And when they press submit, the system gives them the opportunity to track their emotions as many times as they would like. But now I will show you the power of this. So once they've spent this 2 to 3 minutes, the individuals will have access to their dashboard, which only they see it. They will see their milestones. So it's this streak 7, as you see here, there's a counter. Every consecutive day they track emotion, this counter increases by 1. So if they've tracked 7 days, including weekends, they're rewarded. If they track 14 consecutive days, they're rewarded. So these are their milestones. Now they can actually reflect back on their overall emotional trends over the last 35 days or more, and even their trend lines. You can see how reflective this can be and how powerful. They can even go back and see why they were feeling that emotion on that given day. Now, this is just with those 2 to 3 minutes. Now, essentially, what power this gives to the administrators, like principal, vice principals. So I'll show you here. So they can, which only the administrators see, they can see how many of their community members are participating, what's by age, what's by grade here, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. This is real data. Their emotions trends on the entire community level. This community has over 1,000 students. Or weekly trends, they can even see here what are the charts around their demographics in their entire school, gender-based emotions. They can actually see, gender fluids are really sad. So you can get those clues from this system. And not only this, but if you are, as I said, given the opportunity by the system where you can find those who are really on the edge dynamically. So imagine out of these 1,000+ students, counselors and administrators with a click of a button can see who is on the edge and why. Here you can see in those 2 to 3 minutes, the individual is really talking and sharing their heart out. I have really bad anxiety and I don't know why. Feel like I failed everything in life. You can see how much the students are sharing. And it's all anonymous to the principals, vice principals, only counselors who have the access and the trust, because they have the authority to see the names of the individuals. Only these people will see, nobody else. So system has the layers of security, confidentiality. The students can even reach out by pressing the SOS button and sending out requests. So when they do that, the administrators see those requests and they will actually be able to message these individuals or take notes based on that. So here you can see that students reaching out, because people do not actually go to that office where the counselor is at the because of being judged. So now you've given that system of trust to them. They can journal. I'm not going to go deep into it. I'm going to quickly skim through because of the time limitation. But the system behind the scenes is actually doing sentimental analysis on the unstructured information, whether you're tracking emotions or entering journals as many times as you would like, and the system is flagging positive and negative emotions. So you can, if you're an adult, you'll see all these clinically validated assessments, so you can build your trend lines. For example, if I show you here, you can actually see over the last, time windows, these are the mental health vitals for depression, satisfaction with life, how powerful this data can be when an individual shares it with someone who really can provide meaningful information or decision. In case of my brother, we didn't have that data, so judgment is being done, and that is the case even today. Right? You can actually see resources that are being shared by the administrators, and administrators will have full control. They can add, manage users here, they can manage resources. So in other words, given the system, everything is inspiring change or meaningful data by just adding 2 to 3 minutes of that quiet time into your educational curriculum, or if you're in a nonprofit organization for your community. There are mindfulness, there are other ways you can connect with yourself where the system gives you the opportunity to be at peace. Now there is my circle. We know that we don't need 1,000 individuals or friends on social media. We need only 2 or 3 or even 1 person whom we can trust and cry on that shoulder. So this system now builds that circle of trust. You can invite up to 5 individuals. And whenever you go on the edge, the system nudges these individuals with an alert saying that it may have been a while where you guys have both connected and this individual trusts you the most. Would you like to say hi? Without sharing any personal information or anything. It can save lives, and that's what the system is trying to. And then there is an ability to provide care where you can actually, as an expert, can democratize time, and where you can open up your calendar and you can say that I'm available on a Saturday. You can start donating time with these trustworthy individuals. You can set up your profile. And then others who need your help, they can actually come in on this side, and they can find those individual and they can actually see if that person is available and request time, which all will be available on their dashboard. So I'm going to pause here, but in a nutshell, the whole idea is everything that is important to catalyze social emotional learning at scale is 2 to 3 minutes of quiet time. And if you believe that this 2 to 3 minutes of quiet time, as Tia talked about, I think it'll inspire a systemic change. And the question is, can we do this together? So I'll pause here and I'll request questions. My apologies if I'm over time, but hopefully whatever, as an individual, what I know is, if I reflect back on time, my personal university has helped me to find my purpose. And as a team, we are passionate about creating this change and making sure no one else slips into this zone of black hole, unknown, which we all are struggling to deal with. And despite everything that we know now, COVID has really made this situation even worse. So
Thank
back
you
to you,
so much,
Scott.
Sachin. Yeah, we've got some questions coming in the chat. So from Pohai, is this method currently being used here in Hawaii? And I think that there's kind of a 1B question. Is the software and program free? And if it's not, what is the cost?
Perfect. So yes, it has been utilized in Hawaii. So we are working with Kauai Fatherhood Council of Friends, and we've also partnered with Halo'opio Kauai on the Kauai Island. On the Oahu, we have partnered with Catholic Charities Hawaii and the Mental Health America of Hawaii. Now we've been granted Oahu CARES grant dollars in 2020 and Kauai CARES grant dollar in 2020, which has allowed us to build the platform. If you go kfcf.trustcircle.co, so you will see this platform live, or if you do cch.trustcircle.co, you will see that platform live. So that has given us the opportunity to continue and inspire change. Now, Kauai Fatherhood Council of Friends is building a mentorship network community on the island where they're bringing the trustworthy mentors, and they will be setting up time and opening up their profile so that everybody else can start looking into who they can seek out help with. So that's how they are utilizing it on the ground. On the cost side, we have Brain Change Foundation as a nonprofit organization. Now that organization's mission is to deploy this platform at scale. And that's what we've done with UNICEF. So cost is the last thing on our mind. And all we can do is, depending on what the scale is, if you're looking to deploy across the island or for an organization, whatever you can afford, we will be okay with that. And at the same time, we can start looking for, getting the funds from the other foundations, or, even building the fundraising engine on the foundation itself so that community can contribute for the organizations to adopt if they can't afford it.
Thank you, Sachin. If a school or individual in our workshop is interested in learning more, can they reach out to you directly, or would you like them contacting us and connecting you?
Whatever you feel is best. I can put my email here, and I would be more than happy to share my time with them and help answer any questions. But if you would like to field it through your team, then that'll be absolutely fine too. I will share my email here.
Okay, there's a really good question, and I want to be conscious of time because we do have one more guest speaker. But Sachin, if you could answer this quickly, and then maybe you can elaborate via email. Dennis has a question. Are all platform users trained in empathetic listening, confidentiality, boundaries, etc.? Is it a 24/7 service? How do we ensure that the data is protected against other uses?
Absolutely. So this is a 24/7 service wherein the platform is available to you. Now imagine this platform as a bridge, and some demand and supply is your community. So you are bringing in the trustworthy supply, which is the individuals who can help serve, whether these are mentors, coaches, psychologists. The organization whom we partner with, they open up that community channel to serve on the platform. And then the demand could be from the students on the school. And if you're deploying this platform, let's say on island-wide, the platform can be very simply, data can be rolled up so that multiple organizations can utilize the same URL, but they will only have access to their data, no other organization's data. So the data confidentiality and security is absolutely fundamental for the company. And at the same time, the system is FERPA COPA compliant. We make sure our core is that this data is co-owned, and we never sell, share, or do any kind of advertising ever for the lifetime, because this is the individual's data, and the individual's data carries with him or her, because when they shift schools and join another schools, they carry this data, assuming that the other school has also utilize the platform. So in nutshell, the data security confidentiality is layered and built in from ground up. And the systems, the United States data are hosted in United States servers, so we respect the region's data localization as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Sachin. Really appreciate you joining us this morning. Good to see you
Absolutely.
again. If you could throw your email, oh, I see it right there. Sachin has thrown his email into the chat, so feel free to copy and paste that into your notes. Also, feel free to reach out to me or the Ceeds team if you want to learn more about Trust Circle. But yeah, thank you so much, Sachin. It's great to see you. Yeah, see you soon. We'll be in touch.
Thank you. Mahalo.
Thank you.
And thank you for the opportunity. It's an honor.
Oh, the pleasure's ours. Thank you. Okay, we'd like to move on to our final guest speaker, and we always like to finish with a youth. Although this person is no longer a youth, a former youth. Imiloa Borland. Imiloa is currently a student at the New School in New York City and a former participant of Seeds of Peace programs. She's a movement leader and an activist, organizing and leading efforts like the March for Our Lives of Honolulu, advocating for gun safety, as well as the Vote 16 initiative, advocating to lower the voting age to 16. Imiloa has helped to write press releases for Pono News that explain how the TMT was obsolete technology, the mismanagement of Mauna Kea by the University of Hawaii, and the important work the Kia'i, or protectors, were doing for Mauna Kea. She's also a researcher, writer, and editor for podcasts on Daniel Inouye and Patsy Mink. Imiloa, we're so glad to have you.
Thank you for having me. Aloha, everyone. Aloha, mai kako. So my name is Imiloa. I am from both Foster Village area, which is around Aloha Stadium in Halawa and Manoa Valley. And currently my family lives in Ka'aava out by Kualoa Ranch area. And right now I am living in New York City in Lower Manhattan on the unceded lands of the Munsee Lenape people. And I'm just going to drop this website in the chat that has a database of most of North America's indigenous people in their traditional territories. And so if you're not calling in from Hawaii, or if you're not from Hawaii, but you're there now, you can look on this database and see whose land you were born on, or where you personally lived, or where you're calling in from. Because I think it's really important that we always center the original inhabitants of the lands that we are on, because without them, we would have no connection to where we are standing. So yeah, about me and about the stuff that I did. In high school, I organized March for Our Lives Honolulu, which was coordinated to be in solidarity with the other March for Our Lives across the nation and with the students and survivors of Parkland and other mass shootings across the country. Thankfully, here in Hawaii, we don't have a lot of gun violence and mass shootings. So our main focus wasn't to be advocating per se for like the local legislature to do more gun control, but to show solidarity with other victims across the nation. And from that, thank you. From that, we started this initiative called Vote 16 Hawaii, which is to advocate and champion for the state's voting age to be lowered to 16. And this was really important to us, as youth organizers, going to the ledge a lot and working in the community, being like, seeing all these issues and having an opinion and wanting to express that opinion and not having a very important format to express that through voting. And so that was something that we worked on for a while. And in 2019, the bill was introduced and it passed the Senate with a 2/3 majority, and then failed in the House, and it was reintroduced again in 2020. And then COVID happened, and I will be honest, I do not know what happened. It's in some kind of like limbo ledge state. Yeah, so that's what happened, but it is still going strong. It is still a movement that we are advocating for. And I will also drop the link to the website for any of you guys who are interested in keeping up with or learning more about this movement. But yeah, as a young person, I think one of the things that I always like to stress to adults is like, we have opinions, like we know things, and we want like you guys to understand that we have thoughts that are equally as in depth and valid as you. Um, Sometimes a lot of adults do think, oh yes, I do love listening to youth, and then we start talking, they're like, oh, never mind. You guys are too young. You don't know what you're talking about. Um, and I think that's a really big missed opportunity to engage with an entire generation of people because we are the future of Hawaii. Um, without we are going to be the next generation of voters. I'm now part of the generation of voters. Yay. But there are so many other young people who very desperately, would like to be listened to, but because they are not 18, or because of other reasons, adults don't listen to them. And the issues that they either experience intimately or know a lot about, they just get ignored, and their opinions get ignored. And that's something that's just like very frustrating. And I think it's something that all of us um, should really be committed to, like making ourselves open to. Like as Scott said, a former youth. Oh, that hurt my heart. I'm only 19. Um, as someone who graduated high school, as a high schooler, would be like, oh, middle schoolers, they don't know what they're talking about. But I remember when I was in middle school, I had all these thoughts and opinions, and I would love to have expressed them. And so even as a youth, within a youth space, it is hard to sometimes want to listen to people who are younger. And I think that's just kind of how society is structured. So I think that is really important. Ooh, let me read this in the chat. Oh yeah, so like what have adults done to help me? I think the number one adult who has helped me with anything is my mom. Shout out to my mom. I think she really fostered within me since I was young the idea of advocating for myself and advocating for others and people who don't have the voice or the platform to be advocates for themselves. Um, I think that was a really important foundation in my life because there was a lot of times where other people and other adults kind of dismissed me, and if I didn't have my mom there as that foundation, also as a support throughout my life, I probably would have not continued to want to be a youth advocate and an organizer. And I just think in general, um, I think the biggest help with adults and listening to youth is like genuinely like just sitting and listening and like not interrupting and not trying to correct us, um, because we do have full thoughts and full ideas and full opinions, that are equally as beautiful and diverse as the views and opinions of adults. Um, yeah, and basically, I mean, I started doing what I did because I saw so much injustice, both in the world and back at home. I think it's really important to always be connected to your community, and the people around you, because there's a million and one issues in the world that we all want to help advocate for and to fight for and to support. Um, but the best work that we can do, and the most that we can help bring change, is within our own homes and our communities, and advocating for the people who live around us. Because a lot of the times, we like to think, oh, we live in Hawaii, everyone knows each other. We're all like one person away from knowing everyone. Everyone knows everyone else. We all went to the same high school or whatever. But that's not true. There's a lot of people here in Hawaii who we like really want to ignore, or whose voices that listening to them brings uncomfortable truths about ourselves and about our lives. Um, yeah, so I think it's very important to always it's very difficult to want to step back and sometimes hear from someone else that what you are expressing is wrong or harmful, or that you just need to stop. But I think that's very important, both in listening to youth and listening to other people, and just in general, just in life, is just listening to others. So yes, that is it. I am very eager. If you have any questions, please unmute yourself or drop it in the chat. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, thank you so much, Emilio. It's great to see you. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw those in the chat. Emilio has been one of the most inspiring young leaders that have come through the Seeds of Peace Ohana. So even though she's not, or maybe she is still a youth, I'm not sure where to draw that line, but yeah, she's definitely a part of our Seeds family, even though she's all the way in New York. So any questions, feel free to throw those in the chat. While we wait for those, I just also want to say that, across all of these guest speakers, we saw these themes of commitment and critical thinking Another related theme that kind of threaded our guest speakers together is this importance of youth voice, right? So whether it's the struggling voices of youth who need more platforms or a platform to talk about their trauma or their sadness, or whether it's the voices of youth activists like Imiloa and other youth leaders and organizers and change makers. Yeah, we adults just need to do a better job at giving these platforms and these opportunities for youth to express their voice. So yeah, just wanted to throw that in. Iman has a question. Was self-advocacy part of your formal education at all?
Let me think on that. I think there were probably moments of it throughout growing up. I mean, to be honest, anything before like the halfway point of middle school, out of my mind, barely remember. I don't think there was really like in school any classes or teachers that were very much like fostering self-advocacy. I think there was definitely like, I think the focus is more on like communication as a whole, you know, like with like presentations and projects. I think it's a lot of education, at least in my experience, is more focused on not in self-advocacy and more just general communication. But there were plenty of adults in school that definitely encouraged what I was doing and who were very proud of what I was doing. And I think that's really important, even if there isn't active like teaching of self-advocacy. I think having adults around that encourage that within students is a big help.
Great, thank you so much, Imiloa. Any more questions before we move on?
Scott, I just wanted to, Iman, I wanted to share what Hawaii Tech Academy is doing with Ceeds right now that I think is really exciting. They're creating strategies for increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion in their school, and they're co-designing with students. And so just watching them go through this process of having the decision makers at the table early alongside the students has been really beneficial. And so if people want to learn more about that process, we're happy to share.
And I think that we want Seeds of Peace to be a vehicle by which some of that advocacy can take place. We recognize that we are segregating youth through our Youth Talk Back, Girls Talk Back, and then this workshop series, which is geared toward the adults who work with youth. And yet we're trying to increase the flow by having youth voices present. We want to encourage all of you to be really open to partnering with youth in a meaningful way. That concept of nothing for us without us is one that is really vital. You know, we need to be inclusive, and it's hard. All of us who are present here want to do things for youth. It is more difficult to create the space to listen deeply and respectfully to youth and to their ideas, and then to ensure that we are creating space for them to act on their own behalf and trusting in their processes and vision, you know, and it's we have to show some restraint there, I think, and we also have to check our assumptions. And all this is true, I think, of even the most benevolent of us, you know, and I know that I have engaged in a number of educational endeavors that have brought in powerful teachers and community activists, and to build things for young people. And I had no young people in the room, and so, but once you see that, I think it's fortunately a lesson that remains, such that in any of my current endeavors, I don't make that same mistake. And so hopefully all of us can be powerful advocates for youth to do for themselves as well.
And the opportunity for shared learning is extraordinary, both on the system side, on the classroom side, to hear all the innovative ideas that young people have. They're not siloed yet, which is fabulous. So the lens that they bring to solutions is really refreshing. They also have a big interest because it's their future, right? So when we talk about passion and we talk about drive, our young people have it. And then conversely, what the students also learn and what our young people learn is the systemic challenges that many of our change makers have in making the changes they want to see. So it's also growing empathy for all of us who are in this work. It's the long game. These changes that we want to see, it's a long game investment. And having our young people really understand the policy side of things, the systemic barriers that even decision makers with the right intention have to make change is such important learning. So really doing that partnership intentionally is really a great opportunity.
Yes, intergenerational duet.
I like that.
Add one more thing. Yeah, the generational impact of this kind of work, right? So Imiloa is making her way into adulthood, and she's going to be a mentor to this next generation someday. And gosh, she's going to be such an amazing mentor, and she's going to know how to reframe when it's needed, and she's going to know how to guide and mentor when that's needed. So yeah, Imilo, we will be asking you soon to be probably a mentor for some of our youth programs, and we hope you say yes. But thank you so much, Imilo. Thanks for being here. You're a busy college student, so thanks for taking your Saturday, I guess this is your Saturday evening or early evening to be with us. But great to see you, and let us know when you come back to Hawaii.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Imilo.
much.